Syria is destroyed now. It's true. It's true, but now we've got one thing that's worthy, that we can talk and express our opinions about anything. I mean, that's really worth all this sacrifice. We're gonna build this whole country again from scratch, from zero, and it doesn't matter how long does this last, because really all the males and females of this country are willing to build it again and even better than it was before. I used to wear fancy dresses and high heels, but not anymore.
As the Syrian conflict enters its 7th year, more than 465,000 Syrians have been killed in the fighting, more than 1 million injured, and over 12 million Syrians, half the country's pre-war population, have been displaced their homes.
In 2011, what became known as the Arab Spring Revolt toppled Tunisian President Zain al-Abidine bin Ali and Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. That March, peaceful protests erupted in Syria as well, after 15 boys were detained and tortured for having written graffiti in support of the Arab Spring. One of the boys, 13 years old Hamza al-Khatib, was killed after having been brutally tortured.
The Syrian government, led by President Bashar al-Assad, responded to the process by killing hundreds of demonstrators and imprisoning many more. In July 2011, defectors from the military announced the formation of the Free Syrian Army, a rebel group aiming to overthrow the government. The Syrians began to slide into civil war.
What caused the uprising? Initially lack of freedoms in economic whose fueled resentment of the Syrian government, and public anger was inflamed by the harsh crackdown on protesters. Successfully, uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt energized and gave hope to Syrian pro-democracy activists. Many Islamist movements were also strongly opposed to Assad's rule. In 1982, Bashar father Hafiz al-Assad ordered a military crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood in Hama, which killed between 10,000 to 40,000 people and flattened much of the city. Although the initial protests in 2011 were mostly non-sectarian, armed conflict to the emergence of stark sectarian divisions. Minority religious groups tend to support the Assad government, while the overwhelming majority of the opposition fighters are Sunni Muslims. Most of Syrians are Sunni Muslims, but Syria's security establishment has long been dominated by members of the Alawite sect, of which Assad is a member. The sectarian split is reflected among regional actors' stances as well. Even global warming has been claimed to have role in sparking the 2011 uprising. A severe drought plagued Syria from 2007 to 2010, spurring as many as 1.5 billion to migrate from the countryside into cities, which exacerbated poverty and social unrest. Thank you. Foreign backing and open intervention have played a large role in Syrian civil war. An international coalition led by the United States has bombed targets of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant ISIS group since 2014. The U.S. has repeatedly stated its opposition to the Assad government, but has stated to involve itself deeply in the conflict, even after the Assad's government allegedly used chemical weapons in 2014. In October 2015, the U.S. scrapped its controversial program to train Syrian rebels after it was revealed that it had spent $500 million but only trained 60 fighters. On April 7, the U.S. carried its first direct military action against Assad's forces, launching 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the Syrian Air Forces base, from which U.S. officials believe a chemical attack in Khan Shaykhun had been launched. An investigative report published late August alleges that USA and Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the U.S. military used Azerbaijani airlines to transport large quantities of weapons, which ended up in the hands of ISIL and Kurdish fighters, among other armed groups.
Since the Free Syrian Army formed in 2011, many rebel groups have joined the fighting in Syria, including ISIL, Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, Iran-backed Hezbollah, and the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Dominated by the Kurdish People's Protection Units, the FSA has weakened as the war has progressed, while explicitly Islamist groups such as the Al-Nusra Front became empowered. Al-Nusra Front leader Abu Mahad al-Julani announced in 2016 his group's name changed to Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, of the Front of Liberation of al-Sham, and served ties with Al-Qaeda. In December 2016, the Syrian army announced that the Aleppo has been fully recaptured from the rebel fighters, the government's biggest victory in the nearly 6-year civil war. Syrian government forces used the chemical weapons in rebel-held areas of Aleppo. During the final week of the battle, to retake the key city, killing at least 9 people and wounding control over hundreds more, according to Human Rights Watch, whereas several rounds of peace talks have failed to stop the fighting. The Syrian government and the opposition groups have agreed to 13 evacuations.
During the 6th round of Astana talks, Russia, Iran, and Turkey agreed to set up the de-escalation zone for 6 months in the provinces of Idlib, Homs, Latakia, Aleppo, Hama, and Eastern Ghouta. Syrian government also assigned an agreement with Iran to repair parts of the war-torn country's power grid. Syrian state news agency Sana reported Syrian troops entered Deir Zor from the east on September 18, increasing chances of a standoff with US-backed SDF forces operating nearby. Earlier in September, there had been an ISIL evacuation from Lebanon to Deir Zor. US-backed coalition in Syria reported confining ISIL in Raqqa city center. Pentagon accused Russian airstrike to have targeted the SDF, while the Russia denied the incident. During the 6th round of Astana talks,
The Syrian war is creating profound effect far beyond the country's borders. Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan are now housing large and growing numbers of Syrian refugees, many of whom have attempted to journey onwards to Europe in search of better conditions. The UN recently reported around 440,000 displaced Syrian returns to their homes in the past year. According to UNHCR, these displaced mainly returned to Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and Damascus to find family members and check on their other property. Human Rights Watch are also reported that governments and aid agencies have been unable to account for millions of dollars in school aid for Syrian refugees. This lead to serve funding gaps that adversely affected 50,000 children, with much Syrian in ruins. Millions of Syrians have fled abroad, and a population deeply transmitted by war. One thing is certain: rebuilding Syria after the war ends will be lengthy, extremely difficult presence.